talking about really about the stuff that's going on at the moment, and has been going on for the last 20, 30, 40 years, in fact, about the digital realm and how that's affected things. Excuse me while I'm just moving some bits around in my screen. So the main thing about this is really about the way that graduates have had to become more adaptable over the last few years because of the ever-changing industry that we're in, but it's also a really exciting industry as well. So I'm just going to click on this one. So when we look at the way the industry has changed, this is a very old photo from these are people doing typesetting for about 120 years ago. This is a skill that is still around today. It's still something that people do, but not in the volume that was being done even 50, 60 years ago. And I've seen it myself over my own lifetime, where I used to have a printer when I was about 12, 13 years old. I used to print my own stuff. I used to typeset. So when we talk about leading and type, I actually used to use leading and typeset. And I've seen an industry, this is a really good example of an industry that has been changed hugely by technology over the last 20 and 30 years, and something we actually take for granted now in terms of the use of desktop publishing. We have a whole range of opportunities and challenges being put forward over in the future. Things like VR as an example. This has been around for quite a long time, but it's really getting much more traction as we move forward. VR and AR as well. This is something that we like to accommodate at the university. We really embrace this, where when students come to us and they want to experiment with this, we have invested, and we are investing more in AI and AR equipment, because the demand for this is growing all the time. 3D printing, again, this is getting on for becoming quite an old technology. It's been around for decades, but it's advancing quickly all the time. We're seeing only a few weeks ago the first entirely 3D printed house, including all of the objects within it. And so again, it's something that we invest in. We have at Sunderland, we have a fab lab. We pride ourselves in trying to push our students to try these technologies and experiment as much as possible, regardless of what program they're on. This is really, really important. We want our students to surprise us by using this new technology in a way that we never thought possible. And this is what we want to do, is give you that opportunity. We're looking at things like fashion. This is Clo 3D on the bottom right hand corner, and this is using technology that's more akin to something that's been used in the games and TV and film industries, and is now being applied much more in fashion. This has been happening over the last few years, and designers are working virtually. They're working on products that they can plan at home or in the office and send around the world to be tested physically and produced and mass produced. And along with all of these opportunities, we also have challenges, and it's really important to obviously to have a focus on sustainability. All of our students, regardless of level, will be reminded and are working towards sustainability in the future and currently, and thinking about how their designs impact the world we live in today, but also the world that we will live in tomorrow. So if we look at all of these opportunities and also these challenges and tools, well, the one thing that doesn't change over this period of time, and it's where we're seeing ever advancing technology, is innovation. The innovation and the ability to think and design does not change. We have new tools for expressing our ideas and bringing them to life. Some of them give us huge amounts of power. We can test stuff much faster, we can produce it much faster. But that basic idea of innovation, the idea of coming up with ideas and thoughts and trying new things, well, that's the same thing. That's what we want from our students, and this is what we try to make sure you're doing, is to think outside the box, as has been mentioned, and making sure you're innovating all the time. We can teach the tools. We can teach for instance, the Adobe Suite, which is an incredibly powerful set of tools. Photoshop just recently has introduced neural filters using AI, which is really, really exciting. And we can show you how to use these tools. But many people can do that. The main thing that we're focusing on, is making sure that these are just tools. We're looking at the past, the context of what you're doing. We're looking at the history of art and design, and we're educating you in that, so you can see where your work fits in, both in terms of contemporary design and also what's gone before and what could come in the future. That's such an important thing. So although we can teach these tools to a really high level, what we're trying to do and what we make sure our students do is to use their brains to think and think innovatively. The industry is changing all the time. And I've worked in the games industry for over 20 years, games and animation, and I was thinking about all the opportunities. I love to see different opportunities coming up and ways of using new and old skills, and a really interesting industry that's been changing and evolving over time has been the film industry. So Jason and the Argonauts, 1963, one of my favourite films. It amazed me when I was a kid. It still amazes me now. I still find these characters really haunting. And it has stop motion, physical props that have been used for decades, and including the Star Wars movies up until the late 80s, early 90s. And then we move into very quickly shifting from physical props into using green screen and then overlaying CG. So we're seeing the industry evolve and change. The type of skills change quickly as well. But again, that innovation, the ability to think outside the box, remains the same. The same people are working in these industries. They don't simply now get pushed aside because they only know one skill. These are multi-skilled people. These are people who know how to adapt to an industry and know how to think outside the box and think of new ways of applying their skills and applying their tools. So when we look at The Mandalorian, for instance, where we've shifted almost 360, where we're using, instead of green screen CG panels in the background, we have LCD screens on a huge sound stage, which actually lights everything within it. So the background that you see here with the sky and the mountains in the background is generated using Unreal Engine, which is a games engine. It's being applied to huge LED screens in the background. That is now lighting these people who are physically in place, and the reliance on CG is dropping away increasingly with these amazing sound stages. And it means, again, we don't reverse, we full 360 back to the skills that we had previously, where Ray Harryhausen's amazing menagerie of creatures once again could be used potentially where we're using physical props. So the skills and the ways of thinking, the way of thinking is remaining the same. We need ingenuity, we need ingenious people, but those skills shift and they change around. So what we have as well is AI. How does AI fit into this? Well, it's moving fast. If people have been watching things like GTP3, and soon 4 is coming out towards the end of the year, you'll have seen the ability that we have now to type in a description of a design that we want, and this is the famous example that we've seen recently, which is an avocado chair, a design of an avocado living room or dining room chair, and it can come up with many designs for it, and you can pick and refine these designs. Now this is going to increase, this AI, the ability to do that is going to increase over time, as with things like websites like Artbreeder, which have amazing functions for producing, where you can put in a single image of a face or two faces and you can apply lots and lots of different styles to it. This is going to improve over time. We know this from things like Moore's law, where the capacity of computers gets better and better and better, and means our AI is going to get increasingly better. One of my favorite ones is Ganimal. So Ganimal is the ability to take a picture of your pet and you can convert it into any number of creatures. So we can turn it into a hyena, we can turn it into leopards. Now it has varying results, but it's getting better and better. And I'm sure in the next couple of years, this will get more and more powerful over time. We're already seeing this in apps that we're using on our phones in day to day. Now, how does this change things? Does it replace the designer? People are often, the first thing they'll say, well, this is replacing design. If we've got something that we can ask to design 25 chairs, will it replace the designer? Well, I don't think it will. I don't think in the same way that we've taken on desktop publishing and we take this for granted, a whole industry turned on its head almost overnight. If you bear in mind that the old producers of Helix and Staedtler that used to produce our pens and pencils and still do, and rulers, the price of shares in those companies dropped within 24 hours when Apple Mac produced its first affordables desktop machine. We've seen these kind of things happen before, and it happens quickly, and it does produce seismic shifts. But the key thing is, when you look at what you have available on your iPad, you will look at GarageBand, for instance, which I put in the hands of my 12-year-old daughter, who can now use any of the instruments that are available that 30 years ago I would have had to employ session musicians or to come into a studio and record and use. The question is, and I'm not being a slight on my daughter's ability to produce a brilliant music in GarageBand, but the fact is she needs those skills, the ingenuity, the experience and the teaching to be able to use these tools the most effective way. They can speed our work up. They can often broaden our horizons so we can see many different things, new opportunities, but the ability to think and be ingenious and use these tools remains the same throughout. So that's what I wanted to cover in this thing, and I think it's a really exciting opportunity. I'm already using AI. I love using Artbreeder, and I love using the neural filters in Photoshop. If you haven't started using them and you have a copy of Photoshop, it's going to be they're already started to produce it in the beta versions, and they're really fun and interesting to use. Once you start getting into it, you'll see the possibilities as well. And this is what we want to introduce you to. If you want to come and speak to us afterwards or join our courses, we're really excited to introduce this to you and be working with you on this as well.